The twin moons of Aetheros cast their silver glow across the crystalline forest, turning every surface into a canvas of dancing light. Dante Rivers adjusted his field equipment with practiced precision, his gentle hands moving carefully among the delicate instruments designed to measure the unique bioluminescent properties of the planet's flora. After 3 months on this alien world, he still found himself mesmerized by the way the plants seemed to pulse with their own inner heartbeat, responding to the celestial rhythms above Dot at 28. Dante had dedicated his life to understanding the botanical mysteries of distant worlds. His warm brown eyes, framed by wire-rimmed glasses, held the patience of someone who could spend hours observing a single leaf unfurl. Tonight, like every night for the past week, he was tracking the nocturnal blooming cycle of the starflower, gardens that carpeted the forest floor in waves of azure and violet light. Just a few more readings, he murmured to himself, crouching beside a particularly vibrant cluster. The flowers responded to his presence, their luminescence brightening as if welcoming his attention. Dante smiled, pushing a strand of his dark hair from his forehead. This was why he loved his work, these moments of connection with life forms that existed beyond human imagination. A soft whimper broke through the gentle symphony of the forest. Dante froze, his sensitive hearing catching the sound again, definitely not part of the natural nocturne. Rising slowly, he followed the sound deeper into the crystal grove, his portable scanner sweeping for any signs of injured wildlife. The crystalline formations here grew taller than trees on Earth, their faceted surfaces creating a maze of reflected moonlight. That's when he saw her. Nestled at the base of a towering crystal spire was what appeared to be a tiny figure, no larger than his hand. Dante blinked, certain his eyes were playing tricks in the ethereal light. But as he knelt closer, his breath caught in his throat. She was undeniably real and undeniably beautiful. Being before him possessed an otherworldly elegance that made his heart skip. Her skin seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence, like mother of pearl touched by starlight. Long, silken hair the color of moonbeams was braided with tiny crystals that caught and amplified the forest's glow. She wore what appeared to be garments woven from light itself, flowing and translucent, perfectly fitted to her diminutive form. Her eyes, when they fluttered open, nearly stopped his heart entirely. They were like captured galaxies, deep violet, shot through with silver stars that seemed to swirl with actual depth. Those extraordinary eyes widened in terror when they focused on his face. "Please don't hurt me," she gasped, her voice like the tinkling of wind chimes. "I know I must seem like easy prey to you, but I promise I won't taste good at all." Dante's eyebrows rose in surprise, and despite the seriousness of finding an injured being, he couldn't suppress a gentle laugh. "I have absolutely no intention of eating you," he said softly, keeping his voice as warm and unthreatening as possible. "Are you hurt?" The tiny woman blinked rapidly, as if processing his words. You're not going to devour me? But you're so enormous. And the ancient stories all say that the giant skywalkers consume anything smaller than themselves. "I'm afraid your ancient stories have it wrong," Dante replied, slowly extending his hand palm up near her, but not touching. "My name is Dante Rivers. I'm a botanist. I study plants. And I would never harm another sentient being, regardless of size." She studied his face with those mesmerizing eyes, as if searching for deception. Gradually, some of the terror faded from her expression, replaced by curiosity and something that might have been wonder. "A botanist? You mean you study the singing flowers and the dreaming trees?" "Singing flowers?" Dante's scientific mind perked up with interest. "Is that what you call them?" "I've been studying their light patterns, but I hadn't considered they might produce sound." "Oh, yes," she said, sitting up carefully and revealing she had indeed been injured. There was a small cut on her arm that glowed, with the same soft luminescence as her skin. "They sing the songs of seasons and growth, of rain and sunshine. Can't you hear them? Dante listened intently, and for a moment, beneath the usual forest sounds, he thought he detected something musical, something harmonious. I think. Yes, maybe I can. It's very faint to my ears. Her face lit up with delight. You have the gift. Most beings can't hear the planet's music at all. She paused, then added shyly, I'm Celeste, by the way. I'm one of the Luminari. Celeste, Dante repeated, and something about the way her name felt on his tongue sent warmth spreading through his chest. That's a beautiful name. It suits you perfectly. Even in the ethereal light, he could see her luminescent skin deepen in what might have been a blush. Thank you. And Dante, that's a strong name. It sounds like someone who would be kind to small beings lost in the forest. What happened to you, Celeste? How did you get hurt? She gestured toward the crystal formations around them. I was gathering resonance crystals for our healing chambers. My people use them to amplify our natural healing abilities. But I ventured too far from the safe paths and got turned around. She touched her injured arm gingerly. I fell trying to reach a particularly pure crystal formation and must have struck a sharp edge. May I? Dante asked, indicating a wound. When she nodded, he carefully cupped his hands, allowing her to step into his palms. The moment their skin made contact, both of them gasped. It wasn't just the warmth of touch. There was something else, an energy that seemed to flow between them like a gentle electric current. Celeste looked up at him with wide eyes. Did you feel that? I did, Dante admitted, his voice slightly breathless. What was it? I don't know, she whispered. I've never experienced anything like it. From his field pack, Dante retrieved a small medical scanner and held it over her tiny form. The device hummed quietly as it analyzed her physiology. The good news is that your injury isn't serious, he reported. But you might want to rest before trying to find your way home. Would you? Celeste hesitated, then looked up at him with those galaxy eyes. Would you mind staying with me? Just until I feel steadier? I know it's asking a lot of a stranger, but I find your presence comforting. Dante felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. I'd be honored to keep you company. He settled himself carefully on the soft, luminescent moss, keeping his cupped hands steady so Celeste could rest comfortably. Above them, the twin moons continued their celestial dance, and the forest's bioluminescent orchestra played its ancient melodies. Tell me about your world, Celeste said, making herself comfortable in his palms. What is Earth like? It's beautiful, Dante began, but in a different way than Ethros. We have flowers that open to sunlight instead of starlight, and trees that change color with the seasons. The sky is blue during the day, and at night we can see thousands of stars. Thousands? Celeste's eyes widened. We can only see a few hundred from here. What else? As Dante described Earth's oceans, its diversity of life, and the way rain felt on human skin, he found himself watching Celeste's expressions with growing fascination. She listened with complete attention, her luminescent form pulsing gently with what he was beginning to recognize as emotional responses. Your world sounds magical, she said when he paused, though I think Ethros has its own wonders you haven't discovered yet. Like what? Celeste smiled, and Dante felt his breath catch again. The crystal caverns beneath the forest sing entire operas during the planetary alignments. And in the deep woods, there are trees so old they remember the first songs of creation. I'd love to experience those things, Dante said softly. Perhaps. Celeste looked up at him with an expression of shy hope. Perhaps I could show you sometime? If you wanted to learn about our world? The invitation hung between them like a bridge across impossible distances. Dante found himself nodding before he'd even consciously decided. I would like that very much. They talked until the moons reached their zenith, sharing stories of their respective worlds, their dreams, and their fears. Dante learned that Celeste was considered adventurous by her people's standards, always pushing the boundaries of where luminari were supposed to venture. In return, he told her about his childhood spent in Earth's gardens, his fascination with life in all its forms, and his gentle soul that found peace in growing things. As the night deepened, Dante noticed Celeste's luminescence growing steadier, her injury healing with remarkable speed. But neither of them seemed eager to end their conversation. "I should return to my village," Celeste finally said, though her tone suggested reluctance. "But Dante, would you meet me here again tomorrow night? There's so much more I'd like to learn about you. Wild forests couldn't keep me away," Dante replied, meaning every word. As Celeste prepared to leave, she stood up in his palm and did something that nearly stopped his heart entirely. Rising on her tiny toes, she placed the softest of kisses on the tip of his finger, a gesture that somehow felt as intimate as any kiss he'd ever received. "Until tomorrow," she whispered, then leaped gracefully to a nearby crystal formation and disappeared into the luminescent forest, leaving Dante staring after her with wonder and something deeper blooming in his chest. As he walked back to the research station, Dante's mind replayed every moment of their encounter. He barely noticed his equipment forgotten by the crystal spire, his thoughts entirely consumed by galaxy eyes and a voice like music, and the impossible feeling that his life had just taken a turn toward magic. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The next evening couldn't arrive fast enough for Dante. He found himself distracted throughout the day, his research notes filled with absent-minded sketches of crystalline formations and tiny figures with flowing hair. His research partner, Marcus Webb, noticed his preoccupation during their afternoon data review. "You seem unusually scattered today," Marcus observed, his sharp green eyes studying Dante over their shared workstation. Marcus was the practical one of their partnership, methodical, logical, and possessed of an analytical mind that missed nothing. "Did you discover something interesting in last night's samples?" Dante felt heat creep up his neck. "Just some unusual energy readings in the crystal formations. Nothing concrete yet." Marcus's expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced, but he returned to their data without further comment. Still, Dante noticed his partner's curious glances throughout the rest of the day. As dusk approached, Dante made his excuses about conducting another nocturnal study and headed back to the Crystal Grove. His heart hammered against his ribs as he approached their meeting spot, half convinced he'd imagined the entire encounter. But as the first stars appeared overhead, a familiar melodious voice called his name. "Dante, you came back." He turned to see Celeste perched on a crystal formation at eye level, her luminescent form practically glowing with excitement. Tonight she wore garments that seemed woven from captured starlight, and her hair was adorned with tiny flowers that pulsed with gentle light. "I promised I would," he said, settling onto the moss-covered ground. "How's your arm healing?" "Perfectly," she replied, extending her tiny limb to show smooth, unblemished skin. "Luminari heal quickly when we're happy." She paused, a shy smile playing across her features. "And I've been very happy thinking about tonight." Dante felt his chest warm at her words. "So have I. I brought something for you." From his pack, he withdrew a small device about the size of his thumb. "It's a portable music player. I thought you might like to hear some of Earth's music." Celeste's eyes widened as he activated the device, filling the clearing with gentle classical music, Debussy's Clair de Lune. The tiny woman sat perfectly still, her luminescence fluctuating in rhythm with the melody. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Your people capture emotions in sound patterns, just like we do with light patterns." "You create music with light?" Dante asked, fascinated. In response, Celeste raised her hands, and her skin began to glow in complex, shifting patterns. The light danced across her form in waves that somehow conveyed melody and harmony, telling a wordless story of joy and wonder. Dante watched, mesmerized, as she painted music in the air with her very being. "That's incredible," he whispered when the light song faded. "What was it about?" "It was about meeting you," Celeste said softly, her glow deepening to what he now recognized as her blush. "About the wonder of finding someone who sees beauty in small things." They spent the next few hours sharing more about their worlds and themselves. Celeste told him about luminary culture, how they lived in harmony with the planet's crystal network, how their emotions were reflected in their bioluminescence, and how they measured time not in years, but in cycles of planetary alignment. "We're taught that balance is everything," she explained, walking along the length of his outstretched arm as naturally as if it were a garden path. "Balance between light and shadow, between the individual and the community, between what is and what could be." "What do you mean by what could be?" Dante asked. Celeste paused in her walking and looked up at him. "We believe that every meeting, every connection, opens new possibilities. That two beings who truly understand each other can create something greater than either could alone." Her words resonated through Dante in a way that made his pulse quicken. "I think I'm beginning to understand that feeling." The conversation flowed as naturally as breathing, but neither noticed the small figure watching from the shadows of the crystal formations. Elder Nyx, Celeste's grandmother, and one of the most respected luminari in their village, observed the interaction with growing concern. When Celeste finally bid Dante good night, with another tender kiss to his fingertip, Elder Nyx followed her granddaughter home through the crystal pathways. Celeste, the elder's voice, carried the weight of authority as they entered the luminous village carved into the living crystal formations. The younger woman turned, her happy glow dimming as she recognized the serious expression on her grandmother's ancient face. Elder Nyx was old even by luminary standards, her skin bearing the deep, steady luminescence of centuries of wisdom. "Grandmother? Is something wrong? I saw you with the giant child, the Skywalker." Celeste's form flickered with nervous energy. "His name is Dante, and he's not what the stories say. He's gentle and kind and dangerous," Elder Nyx interrupted. "Not by intention, perhaps, but by nature. Child, you are playing with forces you don't understand." "What forces?" Celeste's luminescence flared with defensive indignation. "He's a botanist who studies plants. He wouldn't hurt anyone." Elder Nyx moved closer, her expression softening with concern. "It's not about harm, dear one. It's about the fundamental differences between species. You exist on scales that cannot be reconciled. What happens when his people leave this world? What happens to your heart then?" "Maybe they won't leave," Celeste said quietly. "Maybe there's another way." "There is always another way," the elder sighed. "But some paths lead only to pain. Promise me you'll be careful, granddaughter. Promise me you won't lose yourself in an impossible dream." Celeste looked away, her glow dimming to barely visible. "I promise to be careful, grandmother." But even as she spoke the words, her heart was already planning tomorrow night's meeting. Meanwhile, back at the research station, Dante faced his own questions. Marcus confronted him as he returned to their shared quarters. "All right, what's really going on?" Marcus demanded, his arms crossed, an expression stern. "You've been disappearing every night for a week. You're distracted during the day, and now you're humming music I've never heard you listen to before." Dante hesitated. Marcus was his closest friend, but how could he explain about Celeste without sounding completely insane? "I've made contact with a local life form," he said carefully. "I'm conducting behavioral observations." "What kind of life form?" Marcus's scientific curiosity was immediately engaged. "Sentient. Highly intelligent. But Marcus, I need to ask for your discretion. The situation is delicate." Marcus studied his friend's face carefully. "How delicate?" "Dante, if you've discovered a new sentient species, This could be the find of the century. The research committee needs to know. Not yet, Dante said firmly. I need more time to establish trust, to understand their culture. If we move too fast, we could damage any chance of peaceful contact. It was partially true, but Dante knew the real reason he wanted to protect Celeste's secret had nothing to do with scientific protocol and everything to do with the way her laugh made his heart soar. Marcus nodded slowly. I trust your judgment. But Dante, be careful. I've seen what happens to researchers who get too emotionally invested in their subjects. That night, Dante lay awake staring at the ceiling, Marcus's words echoing in his mind. Was he becoming too emotionally invested? The memory of Celeste's luminescent form dancing with his music, the feel of her tiny hand against his skin, the way she looked at him as if he held the secrets of the universe. It all felt like something far beyond scientific observation. The next evening, when he met Celeste again at their crystal grove, she seemed unusually subdued. Is everything all right? He asked, settling beside the formation where she waited. My grandmother knows about our meetings, Celeste said quietly. She's worried about me. Dante felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. What did you tell her? The truth. That you're kind and gentle and nothing like the stories. She looked up at him with those galaxy eyes. But she's afraid I'll get hurt. That caring for someone so different from me will only bring pain. And what do you think? Dante asked softly. Celeste was quiet for a long moment, her luminescence cycling through complex patterns of thought and emotion. Finally, she stepped into his cupped palm and looked directly into his eyes. I think, she said slowly, that some connections transcend difference. That may be the reason our touch feels like electricity. The reason we understand each other so easily is because we're meant to find each other. Dante's heart clenched with an emotion too complex to name. Celeste ... double quotes. I know it's impossible, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I know we're from different worlds in every sense that matters. But when I'm with you, none of that seems important. Very gently, Dante raised his other hand to shield her from the evening breeze, creating a small sanctuary in his cupped palms. When I'm with you, I feel like I'm discovering what it means to truly connect with another being. They sat in comfortable silence, both lost in thoughts they dared not voice. Around them, the crystal forest sang its ancient songs, and the twin moons cast their blessing over two hearts, learning to beat in harmony despite the vast differences between them. Neither knew that this fragile beginning was about to face its first real test. 3 nights had passed since Elder Nix's warning, and Celeste found herself torn between duty to her grandmother and the magnetic pull she felt toward Dante. Each evening brought deeper conversations, shared laughter, and moments of connection that seemed to defy the laws of physics and biology alike. Tonight, however, something was different. Celeste arrived at their meeting place with her luminescence flickering in patterns of distress. Dante immediately noticed her agitation as she paced anxiously across the crystal formation. What's wrong? He asked, settling carefully beside her perch. It's my sister Vera, Celeste said, her voice tight with worry. She's only been an adult for 2 seasons, barely past her first light change. She went to gather dream moss near the singing caverns and never returned. Dante's protective instincts flared. How long has she been missing? Since dawn. The search parties can't find any trace of her, and the caverns ... double quotes, Celeste's glow, dimmed with fear. They're dangerous, Dante. The crystal formations there are unstable, and there are deep chasms that even our best climbers avoid. Without hesitation, Dante extended his palm. Show me where. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask, he said gently. I'm volunteering. If your sister is in danger, then we find her. Celeste's luminescence brightened with gratitude and something deeper. The elders would never approve. If they discover you've entered our sacred spaces ... then we won't tell them until after we've brought Vera home safely. The journey to the singing caverns took them through parts of the crystal forest Dante had never seen. Here, the formations grew in impossible spirals and arches, creating cathedral-like spaces filled with harmonic resonances that made the very air seem alive. Celeste guided him through hidden paths, her tiny form glowing like a beacon in the ethereal darkness. There, she pointed toward a narrow entrance barely visible between two towering crystal spires. The caverns begin here, but Dante, you have to understand, you're much too large to fit through most of the passages. Dante studied the opening, his mind already working on solutions. What if you go ahead and I follow as far as I can? You could call out to guide me. No, Celeste said firmly. We stay together. There has to be another way. As they approached the cavern entrance, something extraordinary happened. The crystals around them began to resonate more strongly, their harmonic frequencies rising until the very ground seemed to vibrate beneath them. Both Dante and Celeste felt it, that same electric connection they'd experienced when they first touched, but magnified 100-fold. Do you feel that? Celeste whispered, her entire form now pulsing with brilliant light. Dante nodded, unable to speak as energy coursed through him like nothing he'd ever experienced. Around them, the crystal formations were responding to their combined presence, glowing brighter and singing louder than either had ever seen. The crystals, Celeste breathed in wonder. They're reacting to us together. Dante, I think you might be able to reshape them. Reshape them? Luminary crystal singers can alter crystal formations through harmonic resonance, but it requires enormous energy. But with both of us ... She looked up at him with excitement and hope. Try placing your hands on the formation beside the entrance. Feel for the resonance pattern. Dante pressed his palms against the smooth crystal surface. Immediately, the energy connection between him and Celeste intensified until it felt like liquid light flowing through his veins. The crystal began to respond, its molecular structure shifting and flowing like water. I can feel it, he said in amazement. It's like the crystal wants to change. Focus on making the passage wider, Celeste instructed, her own hands pressed against his thumb, channeling her energy through him. Visualize the path we need. Working together, they gradually widened the cavern entrance until Dante could squeeze through. The process left them both breathless and exhilarated, more connected than ever before. The caverns beyond were a wonderland of singing crystal formations, each one resonating with different harmonic frequencies that created a symphony of pure sound. But there was no time to marvel. Somewhere in this labyrinth, Vera was lost and possibly hurt. Vera! Celeste called out, her voice echoing through the crystal chambers. Vera, can you hear me? They moved deeper into the caverns, following faint traces of luminary bioluminescence that might have been left by the missing girl. Dante found himself navigating passages that should have been too narrow, the crystals somehow shifting slightly to accommodate. His presence whenever he and Celeste touched Dotted was in the deepest chamber that they found her. Vera was trapped on a narrow crystal ledge halfway down a deep chasm, her luminescence dim with exhaustion and fear. She was even smaller than Celeste, with the same ethereal beauty, but hair like captured sunlight rather than moonbeams. Celeste. Vera's voice echoed up from the depths. I slipped trying to reach the dream moss. I can't climb back up. The crystals are too smooth. Dante assessed the situation quickly. The chasm was too deep and narrow for him to climb down, but Celeste was too small to carry her sister back up the sheer crystal walls. We need to create a bridge, Celeste said, reading his thoughts. But it would take enormous energy to reshape that much crystal. Then it's a good thing there are two of us, Dante replied, taking her tiny hands in his fingertips. What happened next would later be described in luminary songs for generations. Dante and Celeste joined their energies completely, their connection flowing through the crystal network of the entire cavern. The formations responded like living things, growing and shifting to create a graceful bridge of crystal spanning the chasm. The effort left them both drained, but they had succeeded. Vera scrambled across the crystal bridge and into Celeste's arms, both sisters glowing with joy and relief. "How did you do that?" Vera asked in wonder, looking between her sister and the giant human. "I've never seen crystals respond like that to anyone." "We're still figuring that out," Celeste replied, but her eyes never left Dante's face. The journey back to the village was filled with Vera's excited chatter about their rescue, but Dante noticed other things. The way luminary scouts watched them from hidden vantage points, the increasing number of glowing forms that seemed to parallel their path through the forest. By the time they reached the outskirts of the luminary settlement, a full delegation was waiting for them, led by Elder Nix and several other village leaders. Their luminescence patterns spoke of deep concern and barely contained alarm. "Celeste," Elder Nix said sternly, "you have brought an outsider into our most sacred spaces. You have violated every protocol designed to protect our people. I brought home your great-granddaughter." Celeste replied with quiet dignity, still holding Vera protectively. "She would have died in those caverns without Dante's help." Elder Nix's gaze shifted to Dante, studying him with ancient eyes that seemed to see far more than they should. "And you, Skywalker, what do you say for yourself?" Dante carefully knelt so he wouldn't loom over the assembled luminari. "I say that when someone you care about is in danger, protocols become irrelevant. I would make the same choice again." Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd, some approving, others clearly disturbed by his presence in their sacred spaces. "The crystals sang for them, great-grandmother," Vera spoke up suddenly. "They changed shape at their touch." "I've never seen anything like it." The murmurs grew louder, and Elder Nix's expression shifted from stern disapproval to something more complex: surprise, concern, and perhaps the faintest trace of wonder. "Is this true?" the elder asked Celeste. "Yes," Celeste replied, her luminescence steady despite the weight of all those watching eyes. "When we touch, when we work together, the crystals respond to us both. It's like we complete some kind of circuit." Elder Nix was quiet for a long moment, her ancient mind clearly working through implications that escaped the younger luminari. Finally, she spoke. "This changes things," she said slowly. "If what you describe is true, then your connection is not merely personal. It may be significant for both our peoples. But it also makes it more dangerous than I initially feared." She turned to address the entire gathering. "Return to your homes. I must consult the memory crystals and speak with the other elders. Celeste, bring your friend to the council chambers tomorrow at sunset. There are questions that must be answered." As the crowd dispersed, Dante felt the weight of hundreds of tiny eyes upon him. Their secret was no longer secret. Their connection was now a matter of village concern. But as Celeste climbed into his palm and looked up at him with those galaxy eyes full of love and determination, Dante realized that he wouldn't trade this impossible, complicated, beautiful connection for anything in either of their worlds. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Celeste whispered, "I want you to know that tonight, in those caverns, I felt like we were meant to be together. Like the universe itself approved of us." Dante gently curled his fingers around her, creating a shelter of warmth and safety. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll face it together." Neither of them knew that Marcus Webb had been tracking Dante's nocturnal disappearances with scientific precision, and that he had followed his research partner to the very edge of the luminary settlement. Hidden in the crystal formations, Marcus had witnessed enough to understand that his friend's behavioral observations were something far more significant and potentially dangerous than anyone had imagined. As the twin moons set over the crystal forest, three people stood unknowingly at the threshold of a discovery that would change everything. The Luminari, with their ancient wisdom and crystal songs, the humans with their scientific curiosity and protective instincts, and two hearts that had found in each other something that transcended the boundaries of species, size, and possibility itself. The real test of their love was about to begin.